This edition of In the Van is brought to you by our supporters at Substack. If you want to join us, go to forgeandanvil.substack.com. We appreciate your support. Welcome in, everyone. This is Thursday morning's edition of In the Van. I am recording this segment as a follow-up from yesterday's segment because I mentioned briefly that the border bill and its lack of support is going to be weaponized by the Biden administration for political reasons. And before I even had a chance to get into that, this morning Fox News put out an article proving me right. White House says ICE will reduce deportations detention capacity if Republicans don't pass the border bill. The White House on Thursday announced that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement will soon be forced to reduce operations at the southern border due to lack of funds. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters that because Republicans have not passed the bipartisan border security agreement with funding for Israel and Ukraine, the administration is left with no choice but to pull back from the border. Quote, "Because congressional Republicans are choosing partisan politics over our national security and refusing to pass the bipartisan national security agreement that includes significant border reforms and funding over the coming weeks, ICE will be forced to reduce operations because of budget shortfalls," end quote. So obviously, you can tell here that this is going to be the spin. The Biden administration is going to start to spin this as Republicans refusing to do anything about the border. The reality is, it's one of these tactics that the Democrats always use. It's not happening, and it's good that it is. Meaning, initially, there's always denial whenever the Democrats are accused of something. In this instance, Mayorkas and other cabinet members of the Biden administration have been telling us for a couple of years now of the Biden administration being in office that the border is closed, that the border is secure, that the border is under control. Well, recently, they have been acknowledging that the border is an issue. Because they want this type of legislation passed. And for those of you who don't know what legislation I'm talking about, please watch yesterday's edition of In the Van, wherever you consume podcasts. But here's the thing. There have been multiple reports of Democrat voters, specifically the black community in the inner cities of Chicago and New York, complaining all about the issues of illegal immigrants coming and taking up city resources. The black community feels like they are being given leftovers when it comes to things like social welfare and different economic opportunities that are given to them through different welfare programs. Because they now see a city is strained because they are busy giving all their resources to illegal immigrants. So Democrats are starting to pull the fire alarm here, because the reality is the border crisis is actually starting to hit their deepest blue constituents due to people like Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis sending migrants to these deep blue districts. So the problem can no longer be ignored because their voters are feeling it. So instead, what they're going to do is they've now tried to pass this horrible border bill. And now that Republicans have blocked it, they are going to pretend that the Republicans are the reason why the border is open and unsecure. So we all know that's a farce. Hopefully, most voters will remember that Donald Trump basically made his political living and his shockwave in 2016 all because of Build the Wall. So hopefully they will remember that when it comes time for elections. Some good news out of this, though. Senator Ted Cruz has called for Mitch McConnell to be removed from leadership, and that number has now grown to Ted Cruz, Ron Johnson, J.D. Vance, Mike Lee, and Rick Scott. Those are all the senators that are in support of Mitch McConnell stepping down as leader. Now, it's not surprising. Rick Scott made a run for the Senate leadership right before the new senators were sworn in after the midterm elections, and of course, nothing changed Mitch McConnell stayed leader, and I suspect that he's going to continue to stay the leader of the Senate majority, or in this case, minority. But that being said, it's still good that, again, this is going to be putting some pressure on Mitch to hopefully not try a stunt like this ever again in the near future, but we'll have to wait and see. Another good news, the Republicans in the Senate have blocked the border bill. And then also the House tried to impeach Mayorkas, Secretary Mayorkas. Now, unfortunately, it did not pass. That's another frustration. The House Republicans tried to impeach Mayorkas. It failed by 4 votes. And if you remember, they recently shrunk their own majority when they kicked out George Santos from Congress. So it just shows you that Republicans are not serious about actually putting up meaningful opposition to the left-wing agenda. Now, Anna Paulina Luna, a representative from Florida, says that the impeachment of Homeland Security Mayorkas, Secretary Mayorkas, will pass next week when the vote is brought back to the House floor. So that remains to be seen. I hope that she is correct. Former President Trump has also been very vocal recently, saying that the border bill is one of the dumbest bills that he's ever seen. So hopefully some of this groundswell is going to start making an impact. So it all remains to be seen, but stay tuned for another edition of In the Van.